VC Chemistry, Unit 4, all about hydrolysis. So we talked about how the three major macronutrients are formed in terms of their molecular structure and functional groups that are responsible for it. Now we are actually trying to look at the backward reaction, which is how do we break it down? How does our body breaks down those large biomolecules? And interestingly, they are all broken down by hydrolytic reactions, basically hydrolysis. So let's talk about metabolism as a terminology. So chemically speaking, metabolism involves breaking down large organic molecules into smaller subunits. And all those that we need to know is through the process of hydrolysis to obtain nutrients and yield energy. So there are three major macronutrients that we have learned. Proteins. Proteins are broken down into their constituent unit, that's amino acids. Polysaccharides are broken into monosaccharides. And then fat and oils are broken down into glycerol and fatty acids. Okay? So in the process of metabolism, or what our body actually does is that when we eat food, the food actually comes in the form of protein or polysaccharides or fat and oils, right? So our body, first, our digestive system is trying to break them down into smaller molecules, because smaller molecules can then be transported around our body to the place when it's needed, right? Once it reaches where it's needed, then the process of synthesizing occurs. So basically, we just broken down through hydrolysis reaction, and then once it reaches the place where it's needed, the synthesizing, basically condensation reaction happens, where the subunits are synthesized into larger molecules again. So it's a little bit like you see a furniture assembled on display in IKEA, you'd be like, okay, I really like that. But what you actually do is that, okay, they need to give you those subunits so you can actually transport it to home. Once those components, parts of that furniture is arrived at your home, then they can't be used right away, right? You have to reassemble them to make them into the furniture that you actually see and it's actually functional. So this is a process. So we eat the entire big food molecules. Our digestive system breaks it down and then transport it through the bloodstream into a place where it's needed. And then at that place, it gets resynthesized into those larger molecules to be able to function. So digestion. So the metabolism of food starts with digestive system. So the process of being broken down into smaller molecules is called digestion. So it's a complex process that involves large numbers of separate enzymes. So all the hydrolytic actions that we are going to talk about involves enzymes, because otherwise it's just way too slow. And enzymes, remember, they are highly specific biological catalysts. Okay? So each enzyme increases the rate of particular biochemical reactions. Now, here I'm going to give you the process of digestion. You're not required to memorize this. I just want you to have a general idea of the entire process. So first of all, the food is chewed into small pieces. That increases the surface area of those food molecules that allows enzymes to actually access and catalyze the further hydrolysis. Okay? And then also at the same time, your mouth does produce enzymes that are present in saliva, and they can then react with the components of food. Then your food is swallowed into your stomach and it's broken down by a combined action of hydrochloric acid, and enzymes, right? So there are enzymes working in our stomach that their optimal working pH range is the pH of our stomach, which is like between 1 and 2, right? Then in our small intestine, the enzymes from the pancreas and the wall of the duodenum act on those complex food molecules to produce even smaller molecules. And those smaller molecules and then are absorbed into the bloodstream and transported around the body. Then the rest of the things are actually, if they don't get transported into the bloodstream in small intestine, they reach large intestine, where the water is absorbed from the food, and bacteria in the column also ferment some of the fiber. Remember, like cellulose, sometimes our human body cannot digest cellulose. So cellulose is one of the fiber that will reach your large intestine. Okay, some of the fibers can be utilized to produce smaller useful molecules, but the rest of it will be excreted from the body as a feces. So that's the entire process of digestion. Right. Let's have a look of the overview of the three hydrolysis process that we need to know. So first of all, hydrolysis of fat and oils. So fat and oils, they're the same kind of molecule. They're called triglyceride. So through a hydrolytic reaction, you probably need an enzyme in the middle. It will actually break down the molecule in the middle, add the water molecule back to the glycerol and the fatty acids. Okay. For carbohydrates, so carbohydrates are mostly polysaccharides, right? So through enzymes, normally to hydrolyze carbohydrates, we need two kinds of enzyme. The first kind of enzyme breaks polysaccharide into disaccharide. And then the disaccharide, using another kind of enzyme, can be broken down into monosaccharide. And monosaccharide is where we actually obtain the energy from. Then proteins. So proteins are basically polypeptide chains, and we do need different enzymes sometimes actually break down different kinds of proteins. And sometimes we need enzymes to break down, first of all, to destroy the tertiary structure of protein and make them into polypeptide chains. And then we need another enzyme to actually break it down to dipeptides, and then another enzyme to break down into amino acids. For proteins, what we need to know is that it's basically proteins getting converted into amino acids to be able to transport it around our body.